It's not every day that you think about the possessions of former European colonial powers. But you should know that not all former colonies have gained complete independence. Some still have strong ties with the old empires. Curaçao is one such place, and that's what we're here to discuss today. Hello, and welcome to 7 Facts. Welcome to Curaçao, a country of 160,000 found in the southern Caribbean and part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands? Yep, Curaçao is a lovely island nation off the coast of Venezuela that's not an independent country but part of a European kingdom. It's not the only one either. Together with several other islands, this area is actually called the Dutch Caribbean. Curaçao is of course a tropical paradise, but only because the people make it so. While the climate here is great and constant throughout the year, it is a semi-arid island with not a lot of precipitation. In fact, Curaçao is actually made of 2 islands, mainland Curaçao and a small uninhabited island called Klein Curaçao, which is actually a desert island. Nevertheless, Curaçao is a top destination for tourists, and it's definitely worth a couple of more minutes of your time to learn about it. So let's get right to it then, shall we? Curaçao became an inhabited island a long time ago. The first traces of human habitation are almost 5,000 years old. But that's way too far in the past for us to talk about today. Much more recently, starting from the 5th century AD, the Caquetio Arawaks arrived in Curaçao and continued to live there relatively peacefully, until that is, the Europeans discovered the place. Spanish explorer Alonso de Ojeda arrived at Curaçao in 1499 and claimed it for Spain. Around 2,000 Caquetios lived there at the time, but in just 15 years, the vast majority were enslaved and taken by force to Hispaniola. But in 1634, the Spanish lost the island in favor of the Dutch West India Company. This is basically how Curaçao became and remained a Dutch territory. Unfortunately, the Dutch West India Company continued the legacy of slave trading, but this time bringing slaves from Africa. In the next couple of centuries, slave trading was the main source of income in Curaçao. Thousands of African slaves were brought here before they were sold off to their final owners and shipped somewhere else in the Americas. It wasn't until 1863 that slavery was abolished by the Dutch. The capital city of Curaçao is Willemstad. It is one of the most beautiful cities in the Caribbean region. The vast majority of the island's population lives here, so Willemstad is a busy and cosmopolitan city. The historic quarters of Willemstad, with their beautiful and colorful colonial architecture, have been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Coming to Curaçao to visit this city alone is already worth the trip, but of course you'll get a lot more than just beautiful architecture. Willemstad is filled to the brim with shops, hotels, restaurants, museums and casinos. And the best part is that when you get tired of the bustling atmosphere of a big city, you can then chill in one of the island's many beaches and resorts. When it comes to the etymology of the island's name, things aren't as clear as they should be. One explanation for the name is that it's an endonym. The indigenous people called themselves Curaçaos. This theory is backed up by very early accounts, since Spanish explorers already referred to the locals as Indios Curaçaos. If this is true, we have no idea what the word actually means. On the other hand, there is a persistent story that kinda makes more sense. In the early years of European exploration, many sailors often got scurvy, a very unpleasant disease caused by a lack of vitamin C. According to some accounts, either Portuguese or Spanish sailors who were ill were left on the island now known as Curaçao. When their ship returned, some had recovered, likely cured from scurvy after eating fruit with vitamin C. From then on, supposedly, the Portuguese referred to this as Ilha de Curaçao, or Island of Healing, or the Spanish as Isla de Curación. But there's also the Portuguese word for heart, Curaçao, which sounds very familiar to Curaçao. So I guess the jury's still out on this one. While Curaçao may look like a peaceful tropical paradise where nothing bad ever happens, the country does have its fair share of problems. Its history is dotted with occasional revolts, the biggest one being the 1969 Curaao Uprising. The riots lasted for 3 days and started from a workers' strike that turned violent. There was widespread looting and destruction of buildings and vehicles. At the time, the island's economy, after decades of prosperity brought about by the oil industry, was in decline and unemployment was rising. In addition, the island ceased to be a colony but was in turn included into the semi-independent Netherlands Antilles. Under this arrangement, Curaçao was still part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and anti-colonial activists decried this status as just a continuation of colonial rule. Racism and discrimination against black citizens was still rampant. So the grievances of the people finally erupted in a violent uprising. Stores and factories were attacked, cars were set on fire, dozens were injured and 2 people died. But, as it rarely happens, the rioters achieved their goals. Higher wages were promised and the local government resigned. This was a pivotal moment in the history of Curaçao, as it marked the beginning of a proper Curaçaoan national identity. Curaçao is a top tourist destination, but they don't rely on tourism as much as other Caribbean countries. Its economy is actually well developed and diversified, supporting a high standard of living. Tourism is, however, very important. Cruise ships dock in the country's ports pretty much constantly. The island isn't good just for sunbathing. Scuba diving, snorkeling, surfing, or just having a walk in the historic cities of the island are just some of the things you can do here. Not surprisingly, Curaçao has been named as the top cruise destination in the Southern Caribbean. So what are you waiting for? Book your ticket right now. Before the end of the video, let's talk about this country's status. As I said, it's not independent, it's a part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. But it does have a generous autonomy, with the kingdom handling defense and foreign policies, although it can and does interfere whenever it considers it to be necessary. In this political arrangement, Curaçao inhabitants are considered to be Dutch nationals, and by extent, citizens of the European Union. The country itself, however, isn't a part of the EU, which means that they don't have to comply with European laws. They can, however, qualify for European funds under some conditions. The euro isn't the local currency, the Netherlands Antilles guilder is, although US dollars can also be used. While this complicated arrangement does seem to work, it isn't necessarily supported by everyone, and there is a local wish for more autonomy and complete independence. As of making this video, however, no such plans are being discussed on a political level. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Leave your comments downstairs and don't forget there's a Patreon page where you can support this channel. I hope to see you next time. Bye.